This video will show you how to replace the front lower control arm on a Mazda 3. This is part of your front steering and suspension, located behind your front wheel. A quick note about doing this job: once it's complete, you're going to want to get yourself a 4-wheel alignment. Let's get into it. Okay friend, let's get started on our job. The first thing we have to do is safely raise and support the front of the vehicle so the wheel's off the ground. Once you've completed that, you're going to remove all 5 of your 21mm lug nuts and the wheel. Now that we have the wheel out of the way, let's look right in the center here. This is where we can see our 32mm axle nut. Now I'm going to be removing this, and then I'm going to break the axle free from the wheel bearing using a hammer and punch. This is due to the fact we're going to be maneuvering the knuckle around as we continue on with the removal process. Now once you have movement from here, we'll continue on. Now we're going to move behind the knuckle. In this area is where we can see our lower ball joint and lower control arm. We have to separate the ball joint from our steering knuckle, so if you look right along here, you're going to find that you have a 14mm headed pinch bolt. That pinch bolt makes its way from the front of the knuckle through this area all the way to the back side. And on the back, we have a 14mm mounting nut. Let's go ahead and remove the pair. There's that. Now if your pinch bolt is going to be stuck in place, you can carefully use your original nut. We're going to start that back on a couple threads here. I want to have the end of the nut matched up with the end of the stud. Continuing on, we'll tap on this lightly with a hammer. We don't want to cause any damage. There's our mounting nut. Go ahead and remove the pinch bolt. Now as far as this pinch bolt is concerned, it's a good idea to replace these. If you're not planning on replacing it, you need to at least thoroughly inspect it. Clean it, make sure it's not rusted, rotted, and weak. Go ahead and set that aside. Now that we have the pinch bolt out of there, look along this area. Along the center, directly where the pinch bolt was making its way through, you can see that there's a small gap. We want to carefully spread the ears of our steering knuckle enough that it removes pressure from holding our ball joint stud. Then we need to go ahead and pull this ball joint down and out of here. Now for this, I'm using a pry bar that I can pry, but I can also tap on the end of. That's going to help me spread these ears. We can use some penetrant as necessary. Once you feel as though you have that broken free, I'm going to continue on with a pickle fork and a hammer here. We're going to attempt to separate this. Now as you can tell, the ball joint stud is starting to slide down and through this area. That's exactly what we want. Continuing on, you can tell we still have to separate this a little further. If you needed to, you could try using a hammer in this area. There's minimal space. You could remove the outer tie rod end. I'm just going to use an air hammer to tap this down. Now that we have this area separated, we're going to make our way safely under the front of the vehicle so we can remove our lower splash shield. Now we're under the vehicle. We can see our rearward engine splash shield right along here. The reason why we have to dislodge this is because there's a piece of mounting hardware that holds the front control arm to the subframe. We need to gain access up and behind here. So as far as this splash shield is concerned, you could fully remove it, or you can just pull down enough that you can gain access on whichever side of the vehicle you're working on. Now for this, there's going to be several plastic push clips that we're going to remove. So for those, I'm using a trim tool, but you can also use a flat blade screwdriver if necessary. To remove any push clip, typically you can start removing the center to unlock it and then remove the outer portion as well. Now as you can tell, we can pull this down quite a bit, but we need a little bit more slack on the side that we're working on, so I'm making my way along the driver's side here. Got another push clip in this small corner. Now we can move along to our two 10mm bolts. There's one just behind this small air flap here, and then one just forward of it. We're only doing the one that's behind the air flap. We don't need to do the forward one. We'll take hold of this shield area. We can start pulling it down enough that we can gain access up in this area next. Now inside this area, just behind where our transmission pan is, this is where we can see a 19mm mounting bolt. Let's go ahead and start removing that using a swivel 19mm. Now we can make our way to the rearward hardware. We're going to still be using a 19mm for each of our 2 mounting bolts. Keep in mind, these are the last pieces of hardware holding the control arm in place. Now here's why we had to remove the axle nut. We're going to take hold of the caliper and start pulling this outward. At the same time, I want to be pushing my axle through that direction so we don't put a tug on our axle boots. There we are. Now we can pause out here and we'll make our way towards that control arm next. Now we're holding onto the control arm. We're going to start pulling it down and pulling it out and away from the subframe. You can either pull away from the front or from the rear first. Either way, it's going to come out this direction, out and away from the vehicle. There it is, friend. Prior to installation of any brand new part, we have some cleaning to do. We're going to start at that subframe. Along the backside here, we'll just use a rag and clean this up. We're essentially making sure nothing's rotted, weak, or damaged. Let's continue on with the forward portion of the subframe next. That's good as well. Now we're done inspecting the subframe itself. Let's inspect that steering knuckle where the ball joint stud makes its way up and through. To clean this, I'm going to be using some parts cleaner and a bore brush. Now that I've cleaned the up and down port leading up through where the ball joint stud goes, I also want to pay attention to the port that makes its way from the rear towards the front. This is where the pinch bolt goes through. Let's go ahead and remove any rust or debris from that area as well. I'm using a smaller bore brush this time. Make sure you don't have any penetrant or debris on your rotor braking surface. Now we'll use some anti-seize directly inside of the straight up and down ball joint stud port. Now we can install our brand new front lower control arm. We're going to start with the areas that go into the subframe first. You may have to pull away on your steering knuckle. If you do, just be extremely careful for that axle as you continue on. Now as far as that rearward area, we have the small ear that goes into the bracket. Let's start aligning that. We're swinging the rest of it into position as well. Now, if you needed to, you could lightly tap on this. If you do so, make sure you use a rubber mallet so you do not cause any damage. Just gonna start lining this up. Should be able to press it in. Tap that in as well. Now we're going to start in our mounting hardware. We are not tightening anything yet. We'll start in this area here, where our control arm leads into this bracket attached to the subframe. We're going to align it. For this, I'm just using a metal awl. You can use pretty much anything you need to make your way up inside this area and gently pry. Now I've cleaned all of my mounting hardware, and I've applied blue thread locker. We have that started in. Let's continue on to the next piece of hardware right here. We can make our adjustments as necessary. Once again, I'm just using my awl. Cleaned bolt, blue thread locker. Leaving it loose, let's continue on to the forward mounting bolts next. Now for the forward bolt here, you can tell that we still have to align the port. For this, you may find that you have to pull away on the knuckle so you can swing that control arm forward. We don't want to cause any damage in this area. As you can tell, we still got a little bit further to go here. We have our cleaned mounting bolt and some blue thread locker. Just going to attempt to start this in by hand. We don't want to cross thread it into the wrong positioning. Now we're going to leave all that hardware loose. We'll make our way out towards where the ball joint goes into the steering knuckle next. Clearly, we still have to align the axle as well. Once that's aligned, we're going to pull down on the control arm, align the ball joint stud with the knuckle, and lightly tap it into place, causing no damage to the ball joint. Now we've got this lined up here. Now if you did find that you have to use a hammer to tap up on this, you do want to use a rubber mallet. We don't want to cause any damage. Whether or not you're using a rubber mallet, you definitely don't want to hit along this area of the ball joint. That will cause damage, and at that point, you're going to have to replace items. Now I have my rubber mallet here. I'm going to tap on the control arm itself, right along this area, gently trying to drive this up into our steering knuckle. If it feels like it's binding, you may need to spread that gap again. Now what we're paying attention for is in the slot where the pinch bolt is going to go through. We need to make sure we have the slot aligned with the groove that's on the ball joint stud so we can put that pinch bolt through as needed. Now I've got my pinch bolt. I've applied blue thread locker on the threads and some anti-seize on the smooth shanked area. Let's install this from the front towards the rear. Start sliding this in here. You may have to tap it into position. On the rear of the knuckle, we have the area for our 14mm mounting nut. Let's go ahead and start that on there. Once you have it started on, we're going to snug it up, and then I'm going to torque this to 30 foot-pounds. I'm going to hold the bolt head with a wrench along the forward side. It's snug, let's torque it. The next thing we have to do prior to tightening any other hardware is carefully start raising the front suspension to ride height position. To do that, I'm coming underneath the lower control arm. For this, I'm just carefully using a jack. You can use a block of wood. Just be extremely careful not to press on the center of the ball joint. We don't want to cause any damage to that ball joint. Now we're jacking this up to the ride height position, and we'll continue on with the hardware. Let's start with that forward mounting bolt. Snug it up here. The torque for this bolt will be 180 foot-pounds. Let's make our way to the rearward hardware next. Now for these next two mounting bolts, we're going to snug them, but they each have their own torque. Now we'll start torquing these. The outer mounting bolt is going to be torqued to 120 foot-pounds. And the inner mounting bolt is torqued to 89 foot-pounds. Everything's torqued. Go ahead and remove support from under that control arm. Now let's pay attention to our lower splash shield. Now while we're holding this up, let's start putting in our push clips. You can start pretty much anywhere you want. I'm starting along the back side here. Let's get this one all the way over here. Now let's make our way back towards that driver's side. Now we're up in this corner here. Obviously, I need to align this one. I'm just going to come in at an angle. Should be able to press it in. Lock that down. We'll move along to our next piece of mounting hardware over here. Now to get this bolt in here, I'm just using my socket. I'm going to start it in by hand, and of course I'll snug it up. Double check to make sure your shield is properly in place. Safely make your way out from under the vehicle. Now we're going to install our axle nut right along the center shaft here. For this, to help prevent this from spinning on us while we continue on, you could use a pry bar angling down towards the ground. Or you could just have a second person inside of the vehicle holding on the brake pedal. Whatever's easiest for you. Now, as far as the axle nut's concerned, you want to replace it. If you're not replacing your axle nut, you at least want to use blue thread locker. I am replacing my axle nut, so I'm going to start this on here. Now, when you go to tighten this, you never want to use an impact tool. We don't want to cause any damage to our wheel bearing. We can snug this up using a hand tool, and then we'll torque it. Now that I have that snug, I'm going to torque this to 180 foot-pounds. Now one last quick inspection in this area and we can reinstall our wheel. Once you have your wheel in place, start on all 5 of your 21mm lug nuts. Bottom them out, we'll get the wheel safely on the ground and torque each of them to 100 foot-pounds. Now we have the wheels safely on the ground. We're going to be torquing these in a crisscross manner to that 100 foot-pounds. Torqued. Okay friend, we finished our installation. The next thing you want to do is take your vehicle for a road test, listen for odd noises, and get yourself a four-wheel alignment. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.